Every girl grows up dreaming of her wedding day. The white dress, the flowers, the music, the moment when all eyes turn to her. It's supposed to be magical. For me, that day had finally arrived. I was about to marry the man I believed was the love of my life, the person I trusted with every piece of my heart. We met in the most ordinary way, but our love felt extraordinary. He was charming, kind, and always knew how to make me laugh. From the beginning, he made me feel special, as if I was the only woman in the world who mattered. Friends often told me how lucky I was, and I believed them. I thought I had found the perfect partner, the one I could build forever with. As our relationship grew, so did my trust in him. He was attentive, supportive, and said all the right things. There were little moments of doubt, times when he was secretive with his phone, or when his stories didn't always match. But I brushed those thoughts away. Love, after all, is about believing in someone even when the world gives you reasons to question. And so, as my wedding day arrived, I was filled with excitement and nervous joy. I imagined walking down the aisle, seeing him waiting for me at the altar, and starting our new life together. What I didn't know was that this day, the day I thought would mark the beginning of forever, was actually the day I would uncover his biggest secret. The morning of my wedding felt like a whirlwind. My house was full of laughter, perfume, and the sound of rushing footsteps. Bridesmaids hurried around with makeup brushes, curling irons, and bouquets. My mother fussed over every detail, while my best friend reminded me to breathe and enjoy the moment. I sat in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection as the makeup artist carefully worked on my face. My gown hung nearby, shining under the soft light, its lace and satin glowing like a promise of happiness. I should have been the happiest bride in the world. But inside, my heart beat faster than it should have. A strange nervousness lingered, though I convinced myself it was just wedding day jitters. Everything seemed to run behind schedule. The makeup took longer than planned. The flowers arrived late, and by the time I slipped into my dress, the car was already waiting. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives at the church. "Where are you?" And "Everyone is waiting." As we drove through the streets, my heart pounded. The thought of my groom waiting at the altar gave me butterflies. I pictured his smile, the way his eyes would light up when he saw me in my dress for the first time. That image gave me strength, pushing away the nervous whispers in my head. By the time we reached the church, I was late, but still full of hope. I held my gown in my hands, ready to walk into the happiest moment of my life. What I didn't know was that fate had its own plan, waiting for me right at the door. When the car finally pulled up to the church, my stomach tightened. The grand building stood tall and beautiful, decorated with white ribbons and flowers that matched my bouquet. Guests were already seated inside, waiting for me to make my entrance. I could hear faint music playing through the heavy wooden doors, a soft tune filling the air with anticipation. I stepped out carefully, holding my gown up so it wouldn't touch the ground. My heart raced with excitement and nerves. I was late, embarrassingly late, but I told myself it didn't matter. Once I walked down that aisle, all delays would be forgotten. As I approached the entrance, I noticed the doors weren't fully closed. A narrow gap revealed a sliver of the glowing interior. I could see shadows moving and hear the faint sound of voices echoing near the altar. I paused for a moment, catching my breath and steadying my hands. My plan was to enter gracefully, to make my late arrival look like it was meant to be dramatic, not clumsy. But then, something made me stop. One of the voices was familiar. My groom's. His tone was low, urgent, not the cheerful excitement I had imagined. I froze, my hand resting lightly on the doorframe, listening. Another voice answered him, softer but clear enough to recognize. It wasn't a priest nor a friend, but a woman. I couldn't see her, but her words drifted toward me like cold wind. My chest tightened. Why would he be speaking to another woman just moments before our wedding? Curiosity held me in place. Instead of walking inside, I leaned close to the door, my heart pounding louder with every second. And that's when the truth began to unravel. I pressed myself against the wall, my ears straining to catch every word. My groom's voice, usually warm and comforting, now carried a sharp edge. "You promised you wouldn't call me today?" he whispered urgently. My breath caught. Promised who? Then came the reply, a woman's voice, soft but filled with emotion. I had to see you. I couldn't watch you marry her without saying something. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Her? My heart raced, my hands trembling as I clutched the edge of the door. He sighed heavily. Please, not now. After today, things will settle. You know I care about you, but this marriage, it's important for my future. I nearly dropped my bouquet. His future? What about our future? Was I just a step on his ladder to something else? The woman's voice broke with pain. So I'm just your secret? Hidden away while you play the role of a perfect husband. His reply came cold. You knew what this was. I can't throw away this chance. Her family, their influence, it's what I need. You'll always have me, but no one can ever find out. Each word cut me deeper than the last. My mind replayed every moment of our relationship. Every time he dodged a question, every late-night phone call he brushed off as work. The pieces finally fit together. He wasn't nervous about the wedding because of me. He was nervous about being caught. I stepped back, my heart hammering so loudly I was afraid they would hear it. The man waiting at the altar wasn't just my groom. He was a liar, a manipulator, and someone who had been living a double life right under my nose. In that instant, my dream wedding turned into a nightmare. My perfect love story had crumbled into dust before I even walked down the aisle. But the worst part wasn't just his betrayal. It was the cruel reality that he had chosen me not out of love, but out of ambition. I was nothing more than a means to an end. And now, I had a choice to make. I stood frozen outside the church, the weight of his words crashing down on me like waves in a storm. My chest felt tight, my hands numb, as if the bouquet I held no longer belonged to me. Only minutes earlier, I had imagined myself walking down that aisle, glowing with happiness. Now, the very thought of stepping inside made me feel sick. My mind spun wildly. What should I do? Should I walk in, smile as if nothing had happened, and let myself be chained to a man who saw me as a business deal? Or should I turn and run, leaving behind the guests, the families, and the carefully planned dream everyone had been waiting for? Images of our past flashed before my eyes. The dinners where he stared at his phone, the nights he came home late, the vague answers he gave when I asked simple questions. Each memory now seemed like a clue I had ignored, blinded by love. My heart argued with my head, refusing to believe he was capable of such deceit. But the truth I had overheard was undeniable. Tears welled in my eyes, threatening to ruin my makeup, but anger quickly dried them. How dare he? How dare he use me, use my love, while keeping another woman hidden in the shadows? I wasn't just betrayed, I was humiliated. Yet deep down, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't allow him to stand at the altar and say vows he didn't mean, vows built on lies. The question wasn't whether I would confront him. It was how. Should I do it quietly, spare myself public shame? Or should I expose him in front of everyone, letting the world see the man he truly was? As I stood there, torn between heartbreak and fury, I felt something inside me harden. The girl who dreamed of a fairy tale, wedding was gone. In her place stood a woman ready to face the ugly truth. And I knew I had to walk through those doors. I pushed the heavy doors open, and they creaked loudly, echoing through the silent church. Heads turned instantly. Conversation stopped. The music faded, and for a moment, the whole room seemed to freeze. There I was, standing in my white gown, bouquet trembling in my hands, every eye fixed on me. To the guests, I must have looked like a radiant bride arriving fashionably late. But inside, I was anything but radiant. My heart was on fire. At the altar, my groom's face lit up at the sight of me, at least until he noticed my expression. His confident smile faltered, his jaw tightening. He knew. Somehow, he knew I had heard. I walked slowly down the aisle, not with the grace of a joyful bride, but with the steady determination of someone about to shatter an illusion. Guests whispered, smiling at first, but quickly falling into confusion as they caught the storm in my eyes. When I reached the front, I stopped, clutching my bouquet like a shield. My voice shook at first, but anger steadied it. "Before we go any further," I said, my words echoing through the hushed church, "I think everyone here deserves to know the truth." A ripple of gasps swept through the pews. My groom's face paled. "What are you talking about?" he muttered, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. I turned to the guests, my family, his family, our friends. "The man standing before you isn't just my fiancé. He's also been living a double life. Just minutes ago, I overheard him telling another woman that this marriage isn't about love. It's about ambition. He chose me not for who I am, but for what my family represents." Gasps grew louder. His mother covered her mouth. My father's fists clenched at his sides. "Lies!" my groom barked, his voice trembling with desperation. "She's confused. She's nervous, that's all." But his denial only fueled my rage. "Don't you dare call me confused. I heard you. I heard her. And now everyone else knows too." Silence fell again, heavier than before. The truth hung in the air, undeniable. For a moment, I thought he might beg, apologize, or try to salvage what was left. But instead his mask cracked and his eyes turned cold. "You'll regret this," he hissed under his breath, forgetting the crowd. "No," I whispered back, strong and unshaken. "The only thing I regret is ever believing you." Then, in front of everyone, I dropped the bouquet at his feet. The flowers scattered across the floor, just like the future I once dreamed of with him. The church erupted the moment my bouquet hit the floor. Gasps turned into whispers, whispers into shouts. Relatives leaned toward each other in disbelief, trying to process what had just unfolded. The air buzzed with shock, like lightning had struck inside those sacred walls. My groom, no, that man, stood frozen, his face red with fury and humiliation. He opened his mouth to speak, but his words drowned beneath the rising storm of voices around us. Some guests demanded answers. Others stared at him with disgust. His own parents shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes, as if the shame was theirs too. My family rushed toward me. My mother wrapped her arm protectively around my shoulders, her eyes full of worry but also pride. My father's expression was a mix of anger and relief. Angry that I had been deceived, but relieved that I had found the truth before it was too late. The other woman, the shadow he had hidden, slipped quietly out a side door, her presence barely noticed, but I had already seen enough of her. In the chaos, he finally snapped. "This is ridiculous. You're ruining everything," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. His mask was gone, his desperation plain for all to see. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice calm despite the storm. "I'm not ruining anything. You ruined this the moment you chose lies over love." Silence followed, heavier than any before. Even the guests who had pitted him moments earlier now saw the truth in his eyes, the coldness, the calculation. I turned away, lifting my chin, and walked slowly back down the aisle. Each step felt lighter than the last. Behind me, the whispers swelled, people rising from their seats, families pulling apart. But I didn't look back. The wedding was over. The fairy tale was gone. But in its place stood something far more powerful. My dignity, my voice, my freedom. I stepped out of the church doors into the sunlight, no longer a bride, but a woman who had chosen herself. As I walked away from the church, the sound of chaos fading behind me, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. My heart ached from betrayal. But at the same time, a heavy weight had been lifted. I had escaped a lifetime of lies before it could even begin. The dress, the flowers, the plans, all of it no longer mattered. What mattered was that I hadn't silenced myself. I hadn't let him walk me into a marriage built on secrets and ambition. I had chosen truth over appearances, self-respect over shame. The following days were difficult. Gossip spread quickly, and people whispered about the bride who walked away. But I didn't care. Let them talk. At least I walked away with my dignity intact. I would rather be the woman who stood up for herself than the one who lived quietly in someone else's shadow. In time, the pain dulled and clarity replaced it. I realized that arriving late to my wedding wasn't an accident. It was fate, giving me one last chance to see the truth before it was too late. I didn't lose a husband that day. I lost an illusion. And in return, I gained something far more valuable: freedom, strength, and the courage to demand the love I truly deserve. And that, I decided, was the real beginning of my forever.